Skillbuilder number 35. 35 is all about rabbit strips. We're going to talk about the different types of Zonker strips. We're going to talk about the way I like to tie in an inverted Zonker tail, and then I'm going to show you how to add taper to a Zonker fly.
That's a big bro!
Okay, we're talking about Zonker strips, rabbit Zonker strips in particular. Before we get too far, all of these rabbit strips are roughly going to have the same length of fiber. The differences are the width of the leather that they're cut, or sometimes the cross cut, it's how and what direction the rabbit was cut. We'll talk about all that. So if you want smaller fibers or shorter fibers, you're going to go with squirrel or mink, and those that's why those are there. But let's talk about rabbit for now, because there are all kinds of different types of rabbit. And we'll go small to big probably. So first of all, we have like micro rabbit strips or micro pulsator strips. Fully mill, I think they just call theirs micro. And as you can see, it's just cut to a thinner strip of leather. Now, this is not going to be as durable as the thicker strips. It's going to move a lot more in the water because there's less leather. I like to use this on smaller flies, and some people even like to put this on like the back of an intruder because it kicks around so much. If you go to the thicker stuff, like this is a standard rabbit strip right here. This is what you tie most Zonkers with, the most common size out there, but it might not move as much as the pulsator strip, but that's fine. So this Zonker strip would be used to tie pretty much anything calling for a Zonker because it's the normal size. And as you can see, these are all dyed. I picked some barred and some non-barred so you can see that, but these are all dyed after the fact. It's a lot of work to get them to look like that, but Hairline also does it. They like to do a dual dye job. So a lot of cool stuff in the Zonker world these days. Okay, now we get to the Magnum strip or the big game strip or whatever you want to call it. And keep in mind that if you put a lot of this rabbit on there, it's going to really bog down your fly. That might not be an issue, but the more rabbit you have on there, the more water it's going to absorb. Okay, so this is for like really, really big stuff. Like I put this on mouse patterns sometimes. And if I do tie it on a fly, typically I'm going to use some scissors and I'm going to trim up the leather. We're going to show you that in just a little bit. But the larger size, it just has thicker leather. Here's another one right here. And you can see this is a really, really full one. Not all Zonker strips are created equally. So if you have a real full one like this and you were to put a whole strip on a fly, that is really going to be a hard fly to cast. But just keep that in mind as you're building your flies. Sometimes you need the bulk and you're throwing a big rod, so it doesn't matter. Okay, this is a cool one called a cross-cut Zonker strip. So the idea is the hair comes off at a 90-degree angle. So the way you would do this is you would tie this in right here and you'd wrap it around the hook shank and it comes off at an angle. Fun fact though, if you wrap a normal Zonker strip the same way, it's pretty much going to look the same once it hits the water. But cross-cut is fun to play with. But you can't really do much other with cross-cut like you can in Zonker strips. So it's kind of designed to wrap around the hook shank. Now, this brings us to a few others. So here we have bling strips by Hairline, where they've attached a piece of foil on the other side of it. This is an Arctic fox strip. I usually use these just to cut off a section and tie it like on a crab or shrimp or something like that, but that's an option. And then these are cool. This is a synthetic craft fur Zonker strip. So anyway, there are all different kinds of Zonker strips. Not all of them are created equally. If you choose the right Zonker strip for the type of fly you're tying, the better off you will be. But just know this, if you put a whole bunch of bulk on your fly, it's going to restrict the movement in some cases, and it might make it harder to cast. So if you choose the right type of rabbit, you might have better luck with getting your flies to move the way you want. All right, this is a real simple skill builder. We're going to talk about putting in or tying in a tail on a sculpin fly. You probably have seen me do this a few times, but here we have what looks like, oh geez, I don't know, it's sparkle something, but it doesn't look very good. Anyway, this is the base of my sculpin fly. And if I want to tie a tail on this fly out of a Zonker strip, and this works for pretty much any fly that's going to be inverted. I tie a lot of Zonker strips on inverted flies. So I'm going to say, okay, I want my tail to be about, I don't know, that long. So it's going to go through right there. Just for the sake of demonstration, I'm going to put a marker dot right there, but usually you would just pinch your fingernail and pop it in there. But it's going to be right there. We'll make it red for skill building purposes. So that much is going to be out the back of the fly. Okay, so now comes a task that I've done in the past. It's a huge pain in the butt, but it's so critical to get these flies to swim right, especially if you're using one of these thick Zonker strips. If you don't trim this the way I'm going to show you, the fly just kind of just moves through the water without a lot of urgency. If we do this, it will add a little bit of wiggle to the end of it. But I like to use these Renomed FS3s because they are not serrated. If you use a serrated blade, it kind of catches. But I can just put this right here and slide it in here and catch the leather and just taper back to about right there. That's where it's going to come out of the fly, and the taper is going to start right there. This is the harder side to do. So come in here, try to keep it right. You'll screw up a bunch of Zonker strips and say a lot of swear words, but it's worth it. It's worth it. So check that out. That's a really nice taper. So now if you look at that Zonker strip, look how well that tapers down in my hand. It's like almost a little rat tail, kind of like Brigham's dreadlock that he used to have. We talked about it. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this vise upside down, poke that hook right through that red dot all the way. You can hear it snap when it goes through the barb. Snap. If you're using barbless, mysteriously, that sound doesn't happen. All right, so I'm going to just pull this over, and there you have an excellent sculpin tail. But wait, it doesn't sit like that, right? So watch how to tie it in. We're gonna, I psyched out Brigham too. He thought it was over. He was starting to get up to come over here. All right, so we are going to pull this over the front of the hook. You can see that now the leather is touching right here where the dubbing is. And now we're gonna tie it off. Okay, so to tie off a rabbit strip, I'm going to find exactly where we need to be, about right there. Moisten your fingers and just pull that stuff back out of the way. If you need to pull a little bit more back, you can keep doing that until you find a nice little part in the rabbit. Once we have that there, we can tie our thread over, nice and easy, and then with the same non-toothed scissors, I'm going to come under there and trim that off. See these little fellas right here? Those are attached to this butt that we just cut. So we didn't cut those off. We can just fold those right back over, put one more turn of thread, and we're dialed in. Okay? So that is how I like to tie in a Zonker strip, and also how I like to taper it. Okay, and since we're having fun with rabbit strips, I'm going to show you how to create more depth for the body of your fly. So we saw how nice and tapered this strip is, but rabbit gets really slim once it gets wet. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the rabbit strip, this side of it, I don't know what you would call this side, but it's not the side that we were just working with. And we're going to tie 2 tabs of this on each side of the hook. Okay, so if I'm tying on this side, I'm going to come in here and just cut off a corner of that. And what that does is it makes the leather tab that I'm going to tie in a little smaller. Okay, another thing that I'm going to do is add a little bit of super glue. It just kind of helps hold stuff in place while I'm tying it down. And I'll moisten my fingers and get the already tied Zonker out of the way. So just a dab of super glue right there. And I'm going to put this tab of rabbit right here and tie it in. So once it's tied in, I come about 3/4 the way to halfway down the body and cut that off. And we'll do it for the other side. So on this side, we're going to cut off this bottom corner and follow the same steps. Little tiny bit of super glue. Tack that down. And what that does is it keeps all the tie down points pretty slim. So think about it. We have 3 pieces of rabbit tied in now in that spot. And it's a little bulky, but you wouldn't think that we'd have 3 pieces of leather tied in right there. So now check out what this does with the fly. And this is just kind of an example, but as you can see now, we've got really good taper on our sculpin-y looking fly. And that rabbit, when it gets wet, is all going to kind of blend in there. And that where the taper starts that we cut in, it starts right where these wing tabs end. So it tapers down really nicely. We just tied a fly called the Project Sculpin. These skills are found in that video. And I don't know, it's a cool fly to tie, but as you can see, that's how we tie the tail on it. So anyway, there you have it.